Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Julia Vanderson, the current chair of AMA DocSIG, and I'm thrilled to have you all here with us today. A special thank you to Dr. Abhijit Guha, who will be sharing his wealth of experience with us. Many of you may know Abhijit as a friendly face and DocSIG supporter at our AMA conferences, where he's always been generous with his time and wisdom. We're honored to have him here today to offer valuable insights on navigating diverse journal rankings in our field in anticipation of the job market. For those of you who may not be familiar, DocSIG is a community within the American Marketing Association dedicated to supporting doctoral students in marketing. Our mission is to provide resources, opportunities, and a network to help you navigate your PhD journey and succeed both academically and professionally. Today's webinar is a perfect example of that mission in action, as we focus on the unique challenges faced by many students and even early assistant professors, as our RSVP sheet revealed. We are extremely grateful to have such an engaged group of participants today. And to make this webinar rewarding for everyone, we kindly ask you to switch on your cameras, keep yourself muted, and use your real name as your Zoom alias. Please also use the chat box to post questions. Our team will monitor those. Without further ado, I'm happy to pass the virtual mic over to my DocSIG colleague, Xiaoying, who will be moderating today's session. Thank you, Xiaoying, and welcome again, everyone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Xiaoying, and I'm a four-year PhD student from Syracuse University, and I'm also the Vice Chair of Special Project and Partnership in AMA DocSIG. So today we'll have the first part of the 30 minutes will be Dr. Guha's presentation, and then we will take questions at the end from the chat box. And because when you sign up, we already prepared like all the questions you guys have. We are well organized. So let me first introduce Dr. Guha a little bit more before we get into the juicy part. So Dr. Guha is a distinguished scholar whose research focused on AI and retelling right now. And he has very impressive track record with over 30 publications in leading academic journals. I'm jealous. And beyond his impactful research, Dr. Guha is also a dedicated contributor to the academic community. He served as an associate editor for Journal of Academy of Marketing Science and Journal of Retelling and Journal of Business Research. And his excellence has been recognized with numerous awards. And additionally, in 2023, he was the finalist for the Society for Marketing Advanced Distinguished Teacher Award, highlighting his dedication to education. And this, before joining to academic, Dr. Guha also spent nearly a decade in corporate world, so working in management consultant and also sales positions. So this great blend of industry and academic expertise allowed him to bring a well-rounded perspective to his research and also teaching. So today we are incredibly fortunate to have him share his insight with us. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Guha.
Thank you. Thank you, Xiaoying. Thanks to DocSIG. Thank you, Julia. Let me share screen and launch this thing. Is there some kind of PowerPoint that's showing? Is that working?
Yes.
So hello, everyone. I know people are in different time zones, so I'm sticking with hello and not saying good afternoon or anything else. I appreciate this opportunity from DocSIG. And today we're going to talk about journalists and how you should think about journalists as relevant to you. Let me start with a couple of caveats. One man's opinion, right? I own any errors that may happen in this document. I should caution, some of you may not fully like what you hear here. It may be different from what you've heard. And your network may also not like what you hear here. So this is a discussion, and I'm happy to take questions at the end. I'm making a couple of assumptions, and you'll have to adjust for the assumptions. My assumption is you're probably a late stage PhD student. You could be an early stage assistant professor. You're thinking, here's a job, there's a school. What kind of journalist do I follow as I sort of build my career towards tenure or, whatever goals you've set yourself? So that's one thing. That's my assumption. Second is I'm a CV person. So some of my examples will be C-based. You'll have to suitably adjust if you're a strategy or quant student. And I'm based in the US. So, again, you'll have to adjust if outside the US. But I think a lot of this is applicable broadly. Okay, with that said, here's my professional journey. And I state this just to say that I've studied or worked in very, very different kinds of schools. And that I think gives me a perspective to talk about what different kind of schools would like. So you can see my PhD was at Duke, assistant professor in Wayne State. I made tenure in South Carolina, and now I'm at Florida Atlantic. Very different types of schools, different expectations. And I think that has shaped some of my thinking on this topic. The other thing is I've also published in very different kinds of journals. So if you look at the kind of journals I've published in UTDs, in FT50s, but also in a wide variety of AJG journals at various levels. I'm also AE at different kinds of journals, right? So again, I think that's a broad kind of swath of experience. And so that kind of builds into some of the points I'm going to make today. Okay. So I'm going to have three buckets. First, I'm just going to talk about different types of journalists. This, I'm assuming many of you know, but I think a recap is important. Then I'll talk about how schools think about this. And then I'd like to talk about how is this relevant to you and how should you think about this. Okay. So why have journalists? The various reasons to have journalists. Some may say, look, it's a measure of quality, right? At some level, we have to kind of figure out which journals are good, which are bad, beyond just say impact factor or something like that, or acceptance rate. So yeah, it's a measure of quality. Also, way to categorize. So, journalists categorize in different domains. Some are more general, some are discipline specific. And also just to provide general guidance to the field to think about all these different journals. There are lots of journals, right? So here I picked four, right? This is not a comprehensive listing, but here are the four that I'm the most familiar with. There's a UT Dallas ranking, clearly came out of UT Dallas. It's across disciplines. There's a marketing specific list. Then there's FT50, again, that clearly came out of FT. That's 50 journals. It was 45, gone to 50. Again, this is across disciplines. And I think there's 6 marketing specific journals on this. There's an ABDC list, which is popular in Australia. Other places use it as well. And there's AJG, which has its roots in the UK. Xiaoying has this presentation. I'm sure she's happy to share. It has some links. For the sake of discussion to kind of narrow this and keep this manageable, I'm going to focus on 3 of these, right? In the US, ABDC is not followed that much. AGG is still followed. So I'm going to stick to these 3. But obviously, you should be guided by whatever is used in your domain space. The same principles apply, right? Okay. So here's an example. So I take Journal of Marketing Research. Great journal. It figures on the UTD list, right? It figures on the FT50 list. And on the AJG list, it's a 4-star, right? Clearly, everybody thinks it's a really, really top-tier journal. Now you have Journal of Academy of Marketing Science. It's not on the UTD. It is on the FT50, and it's also a 4-star. So you can see differences coming across journals. You have, clearly FT50 and AJG put jams in the top tier, right? Whereas UTD does not. And then you have Journal of Retailing, which is a 4 in AJG, but it's not in UTD or FT50. So again, you can see how different journals play out. Here's a broader set, right? So I picked a set of marketing journals, not comprehensive. And then I picked in green what I call related journals that a CV person may go for. Now, clearly, if you're a quant person, you may go for different journals, right? So you can see like journals that everybody puts in the top tier, JMR, JM, JCR, marketing sciences there, obviously, if you're a quant person. And then there are other journals like management science, JIBS, right? These figure in all the top tiers. If you look at the next level, which is FT50, but again, 4-star in AJG, you have JAMS, you have JCP, but you have Journal of Applied Psych, a great journal. It also figures at the same level. And then if you just look at AJG4, Journal of Retailing, IGRM, but you also have Journal of Service Research, which some of us may publish in. So you can see it's not just marketing, but related journals, they all find a slot on this. And so we can categorize journals in different ways. So that's just a broad way of categorization, right? So now everyone's kind of introduced as to what the lists are, what the journals are. The next question is, what do schools do with this, right? So before coming to what you should do, let's talk about what schools do. And again, this is based on my experiences with various kinds of schools. In general, I think schools kind of trade off across two dimensions. Some schools lean on what I call quality, and some lean on quantity, and people fall in the middle. Think of this as a continuum. This is not a binary marker. The folks who lean much more on quality, they will average. They will say, what's the average kind of journal you publish in? The folks who lean much more on quantity are going to count. And so that's the kind of mind space that folks are coming from. And here are some disguised examples, right? So I present 3 cases. I picked a top tier public, which would consider itself as good as anyone in the game, a just below top tier public, and a mid tier public, right? This is not exhaustive, but gives you a feel. So let's talk about each of these 3 in turn. Let's talk top tier public, right? So these guys think they're really good. They pay well. They provide great support. And they may have, this is not an unreasonable standard for tenure. So imagine you finish a PhD, you come in as a rookie, you go through the standard time period to make tenure. This may be a reasonable expectation, right? One of the standard comments you're going to hear if you're in these kind of schools is from your department chair saying, why are you working on articles that are not going to UTDs? We're not going to count them. Why are you doing that, right? And so that's an example of one type of school. Here's an example of another type of school, so just slightly below. And here it gets more fluffy, right? They may want 4, but maybe they may want 3 and an FT50, right? So it gets a bit more nuanced. A couple of discussions could be, somebody's going to say, what are you working on? And if you're working on something, it better be good enough for the first submission to be to UTD. Now, after that, maybe you can take it to an FT50, but don't go below that. We're not going to count it. Okay. The second thing you're going to hear all the time is focus on marketing. I'll tell you where this comes from. This comes from a department chair saying, I need to compete and tell my dean, this is a good department. One way they do it is you look at some journal ranking and you count only marketing, right? And so that's why your department chair will prefer that you publish in marketing journals. So you can see this comment coming out more and more, especially in schools that are slightly below top tier. They want to get there. This is going to come up more and more. If you go to a mid tier, the conversations change. The numbers are more, but the requirements to hit the UTD and FT50, they go down somewhat. And they're realistic, right? They don't provide that much research support, but for teaching. So they'll say, look, we need to see movement every year. It's suddenly a very different conversation. There'll be discussion on balance, right? They will still want some good journals, right? They would love these. In fact, if you can get these, they will compensate that very significantly, right? Very often they'll provide course releases, they'll provide extra money. They really love these journals, but just because not many come through, they may not demand that much as others. So you can see, right, that there are different types of schools. They have different kinds of requirements. Clearly, everybody loves the top tier, but everyone's also somewhat cognizant of where they are, what resources they provide, and so they slant the target to adjust for that, right? So that's what schools are thinking, right? Now, with that in terms of what schools are thinking, now I want to come to what is the meat and potatoes of the presentation, which is how does this impact you, right? So you are a late stage PhD, maybe an early stage assistant prof, you've got a job, you've gone to the market, whatever you have, and you've got a job. Great. How do you build your career? And I'm going to argue how you build your career is a function of 3 things, right? It's a function of what your school wants. You're working there. Wherever you have a job, that's what you're working in, right? So some of what they want has to figure in your discussion matrix. One is your goals. What do you want to do, right? Because your goals may or may not align with your school. And the third is your ability. And I've put the word best guess because early in your career, you may not exactly know your ability, right? You're still trying to discover what are you good at. You will grow as a scholar, right? So your ability is very much in flux. Look, today I am who I am. I've been out a long time. The variance around who I am is fairly low. A new person, there's a lot of variance. They could become very good. They could stay where they are. We don't know. They're going to grow. So your ability, that's what I'm saying, best guess. You're going to have that discussion. Let's talk about each of these three in detail in turn, because the combo of these three is going to determine what's right for you. And the question is, what's right for you? There's no one strategy right for everyone. And I'll give examples. Let's start with the first one, what your school wants. Your school will have defined itself in certain ways. They'll have certain expectations for tenure. A good department chair will be able to tell you, at the end of X period of time, if this is where you are, I think your case for tenure will be very competitive. They're not going to make a slam dunk 100% discussion, but they will give you an indication. That's an important factor, right? In fact, you should have this discussion, and department chairs may want to back off on it. You should ask for the discussion, see what you get, look at what other people have done. But what your school wants, you'll get a feel. I put that point in stars as follows. Sometimes you get a job in a school and then the school goes through transition. That is your nightmare scenario. You join a school thinking, this is the target. Somewhere in the middle, something happens and the targets change. That is a very challenging place to be. I have news for you. It's your problem. If you are an assistant professor in that school, your job is to be on top of this and see if the school is changing and then figure out how this impacts you. You cannot say you are blindsided. You are there. You should be able to figure this out, figure what's happening, and then strategize accordingly, right? Whichever way it goes. But yes, what your school wants is an important component of how you will decide what to target. Let's say the second, your goals. We are all different. We all have different goals. I put down a couple of points. Some of you may have joined school X, but may not want to stay in school X. You may want to move. Maybe you want to move higher. Maybe you felt you were misplaced after the job market. Maybe you seek mobility. That's one. Some of you may get a job, but because of various reasons, you may want to move. Maybe you have a significant other. Maybe you want to go live in certain places, right? Mobility is a totally valid goal to have, right? That's one aspect. Or you may be totally happy in the place, totally happy in the school and say, I am here to make tenure. Great. That's a totally valid goal to have. Third is some of you may have different personal goals. Look, I look at my batch at Duke. I thought all of us were smart. Many of those folks are not in academia today. They started in really good schools. Your personal goals may have, maybe you have different personal goals, and that will take you in different directions. The point is, all of these are valid goals. There is no one goal that somebody should say, this is the goal you should have. You have your goals. It's for you to manage your career and make the best life for yourself. Own those goals and work towards it. The third point is your ability. And like I said, it's a best guess for various things. One is you're going to grow as a scholar. You've just started, right? Like you're going to learn, you're going to become better. That's one thing. Second is PhD programs differ in terms of training. So you're going to have to sit and figure out, where do I stand in the spectrum of, my peers? Resources vary across school. That impacts your ability. You may teach more, teach less, large research budget, small research budget. Like if on the CB side, we need research budgets to run prolific studies. The demands on, large sample sizes, multiple replications, those are growing. On the quant side, I'm sure there are similar kind of demands, just different things you're spending money on. So resource is important. Network is important. I mean, some of you will have really good networks. Some may not. All this feeds into ability, right? There's a bunch of things that feeds into ability. One is you are growing as a scholar. Then what training did you get? And training could vary even within the school you're in, right? Like at Duke, yes, we took similar classes. But you know what I really benefited from? This one person who sat with me for 2 years, with whom I published my first paper, who painstakingly explained to me this is how CV research works. And I got more from that one person than any class I ever took. Resources, very important. Network, very important, right? And so, again, your ability is your best guess. I'm going to put a caveat here. Be honest with yourself. You don't have to tell anybody what you think your ability is. Sit in a dark room, talk to 3 close friends or whatever. But you should be honest with yourself. Where do I stand? And that's going to impact what you can do. It's good to be aspirational, but it's also good to be realistic. Your realistic estimate should not be shared with anyone. You don't need to share it with anyone, but you need to share it with yourself, right? You need to have those couple of close friends who will provide you some input, and you should be honest with yourself, where do I stand? Because that's going to determine what you're shooting for, right? So those are factors to consider as you think about, how do I set? So with that said, that's a lot of things. How does this all come together? That's, I think, what everybody's asking. So the first thing I'll take a sidebar is you need a set of folks to discuss it with. But who? Who are these people, right? Is your department chair the right person? Wrong person, totally. Your department chair is very worried about what's good for the school. And that's right, that's the person's job. So there's a confound in how the person's going to approach that discussion with you. Should it be your advisor? Again, it's not clear to me incentives are aligned. Your advisor may have very different goals, maybe a different stage of life than you are. Some of you have advisors who are assistant profs trying to make tenure. Some of you will have advisors who are chaired professors at the end of their career. Very different goals. Should you talk to your co-author? Again, your co-author may have different goals. You need a set of folks who have no other motivation except to help you. I have a set of folks like that. They're not co-authors, not my advisor, not my department chair, but somebody I can go talk to. We can have a discussion and they will say, I'm going to try and put myself in your shoes. And here's where I think you are. There is error around it. So you'll want some triangulation. But this is important. Find folks to talk to who know the game. It would be great if they're slightly senior to you, right? I can think of at least 2 people who are really senior in the field, maybe 10 years ahead of me, have published very, very well. We are not co-authors. They were not my advisor, not department chair. And they're happy to chat with me whenever I want and say, look, here's where I think you are, realistically speaking. That's been very helpful to me. Okay. So I'm going to present some examples of folks, and you'll see all types, folks that have moved up, folks that have moved down and made different decisions, right? And this gives you a feel of how you can think about developing your strategy. That's what's right for you. Look, some of you are going to guess who these people are, and that's fine, but I'm not going to certainly take the name, right? So here's the example one. So this person spent about 8-9 years in a mid-tier university. And this person had about 8-9 papers, but no UTD, no FT50, right? Had some revisions, but nothing published. Went up for tenure and made it. So at that time, the objective was, I need to make tenure. I got a family, I have some personal goals, I need to make tenure. After all that was done, the person said, okay, can I, do something different? Moved up slightly in tier of university, resources went up, the person was post-tenure. It was therefore slightly, pressure was slightly less. And the person has a phenomenal, record today. 10 is probably an underestimate, but there's 10 UTDs sitting in 12, 13 years. That's a really good record, right? So this person actually moved up, right? And you can see the transition that happened. One example. Second example. So somebody started at just below top tier public university and said, I'm going to try and make tenure, had some UTDs, had a mix of papers, reasonably good record, moved across to universities, made tenure. And then the person got an opportunity to go to a top tier public university, right? One level up. And that's great, right? This person did that. I'm very happy for this person, really good friends. There's one difference at this top tier university. They've said, look, you publish in many types of journals. We don't care. We care about only UTDs. We looked at what you had, that's good. But you want to make full, we need to see a bunch of UTDs coming out. And this person's working towards it. There are resources, there's PhD students, person is post-tenure, life is easier, So there are two examples of, folks who've had different sort of strategies, different points in time, right? And you can see what's common across these folks. They adjusted to the kind of resources they had. They had goals, but they also adjusted the kind of resources they were faced with. And you can see that over time, post-tenure goals changed, right? They moved, and contingent with movement, resources changed, they had different strategies. Here's a third example, right? Person started in a mid-tier university, spent 5-6 years. I think after 5-6 years, there were like 3 papers. There was 1 UT. This person would not have made tenure. The numbers were just low, right? If the person had to go up. This person moved as an assistant. Then a whole lot of papers went through the system, right? Person made tenure, all that. Then the person moved to a mid-tier university, right? Resources go down slightly. And, what will happen is an open question. But I imagine that, there won't be those many UTDs. There could be, but you adjust to the resources, school. So you can see movement across time, different strategies, right? But certainly, even every school rewards FT50s. Every school rewards UTDs, even in schools that don't need them for tenure. If you get that, they will reward you. So yeah, it's certainly worth pushing. And if you think you can, especially post tenure, worth doing it 100%, right? That's what they would expect from you. That's what they reward you for. But it's a strategy. You pick what makes sense for you. This is a very interesting case, right? This person I have a lot of respect for. So this person started in a mid-tier university. And this person said, I need to make tenure. And this person basically went hell for leather on numbers. No UTD, no FT50. I think there was one AJG4. Person made tenure. Like, gave themselves a shot. Now the person may or may not change their strategy, may have different goals. I have no idea, right? Right now the person is just celebrate, right? Having made tenure. But again, this is a totally valid strategy, right? Saying that this is what my school demands, forget anything else, I'm not doing that. I'm just running hell for leather to see what can happen. Here's another example. Again, I know this person really well. I think this person is really smart. And I think what this person is doing is very risky, but this person deserves the right to craft a strategy that is right for this person and to take risk, right? So this person is a mid-tier university. This university probably seeks numbers. This person thinks very well trained, wants to move up. This person has 2 UTDs. That's a phenomenal achievement in 4 or 5 years. But nothing else sitting. I know the person's pipeline. Is it risky? Yes, it's very risky. Like, person may go up for tenure in a year, they'll say 2. What are we going to do with 2? There's nothing else. But this is this person's strategy. This person says, this is my life. I deserve the right to lead my life as I want to on my terms. I'm young enough to take the risk. I'm brave enough to take the risk. I have humongous belief in my ability to take the risk. I will take the risk. And if it works out, it's on me. If it doesn't work out, I will live with it. But this is the person's strategy, right? So you've now seen very, very different cases, very, very different strategies. Let's pull this together. What does it mean for you? These are your 3 inputs. Where are you today? What are your goals? Could be personal, professional. And what is your ability? Your best guess, because your ability is a moving target when you are young. And it's a function of many things, not just your innate training and drive, but also resources and network. And these 3 things factor into you owning your strategy. And you can see what this means, right? If you are in alignment with what your school wants, by all means chase that, that's fine. But maybe you're not in alignment with what your school wants. Maybe you're in a school that's mid-tier, you want to move up, in which case you will take some risks. You will try and shoot for some UTDs, and if they work, that's great, but there's inherent risk. If you fail, you could go up for tenure and you've got a low number with some UTDs and nothing else, and they're going to turn you down. That's your risk to take. You have to own that. Or you could say, I'm in certain school, everything matches, we're good. Or you could be in a high-level school saying, look, I don't have that ambitious goal. I may choose to slow down. I may choose to say, it's okay, I'll move to another school. It's your strategy. You have to own it. If you're a journalist, your personal journalist aligns with your school, that's wonderful. Doesn't have to. You may shoot up, you may shoot down, you may shoot at par, that's on you, but you need to own your strategy. And there are 3 inputs: what your school wants, your goals, and your ability. I think it's easy to figure out what your school wants. After you talk to your department chair and 5 others, you'll get it. After you see some people going up, you'll get it. Your goals, you can have that conversation with yourself. That's fine. It's your ability that's the biggest challenge, because you're growing as a scholar. You don't know your ability, and ability is a function of other things also which are outside your control. That you need friends who talk to you, and you need to be honest with yourself where you are. So, is there a right journalist? No, there is no right journalist. What there is a journalist that's right for you. I know my journalist, you should know your journalist, right? So I clearly know what I'm shooting for, and what I invest my efforts towards that journalist. So you need to find a journalist that's right for you. You are a person with a certain set of goals, with certain ability in a school at a point in time. Which journalist should you chase that's going to lead you towards your goals contingent on everything else? If you want to move up, you know which journalist you're chasing. There's risk. If you want to stay there, you know which journalist you're chasing. That may be fine, and you may give up some future mobility opportunities. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that, right? If your life personally is currently strained, you may have a different journalist. That's fine. But there's a journalist that's right for you, own strategy. You've seen all different kinds of strategies. And believe me, everyone's happy in their life, right? Everyone's figured out what's right for them. But as long as you know what you're doing, as long as you can own your strategy and say, this is my strategy, I chose it, I will live and die by this, you're okay, right? Again, it's a function of the school you're in, your goals, and your ability. There are 2 points I want to close with. 1, strategies can change over time. You saw in the examples, there are folks who said, let me make tenure where I am. After that, I'm going to try and see if I can move, and maybe I'll shoot for a slightly higher journalist. Is this strategy right for everyone? Probably not. Very often, folks will say, I don't believe that you can make that jump. But those 2 people clearly were able to prove that I can make that jump and I am worthy of moving to another school. So it's very possible. Or the reverse. There are folks who start in one school, move down, adjusted journalist, and they are fine with their life. Strategies can change over time. You may have personal situations that hit you. So, you may make tenure and then you slow down for 3-4 years because something happened. That's life. I'll tell you what's dangerous: mismatched strategies. A strategy that is mismatched to your school is dangerous. You should know that there's a mismatch and you should own it and know the risk. A strategy that is mismatched to your ability is dangerous. If you think that, okay, I'm going to shoot for just the UT thing, ability is not there, that's a very risky strategy, right? A mismatched strategy is very, very dangerous. This is something you need to calibrate and just be sure that your strategy at all times, largely driven by goals, is consistent with your school and your ability. Your school you can figure out. I keep saying your ability is a hard one because you're growing as a scholar. You don't know where you're going to end up, right? That's the moving target. You need to make friends. You need to have a set of folks who will help you calibrate, and this will change over time. So it's on you to kind of figure out where you're going. Those are the points I wanted to make, right? I wanted to leave some time for questions. I know Xiaoying has a list of questions. I have some slides on some questions, but I'm going to pause, give it to her, and I'm happy to take any question that she has, or we can go to the question that she sent me that I've got slides on. But I'll leave you with this. There's no right journalist. There's a journalist that's right for you. It's a function of your school, your goals, and your ability. You need to own it. It could change over time. That's fine. Revisit it. But this is your strategy for you to live, for you to own. I'm going to pause, give it to Shalini.
Thank you, Professor Guha. I think I immediately have a follow-up questions after this. When you say we should ask for the school and then find our strategy, do you mean the school we are in right now, or the school I will when I gonna be in job market, then the school I'm aiming to get into?
So it's always the school that's giving you a job. So let me go here, right? This person. This person has started their career. You should never worry about what your PhD school says. They're not giving you a job. Unless they give you a job, who is paying your salary? It's not a PhD school. You're studying there. Great. It's about the school that gives you your first job. So this person came from a certain school which had certain beliefs about journalists. Great. Gone to a very different kind of university. That's fine. This person clearly thinks they can move. And therefore, they've taken on the strategy that's at variance with the journalist for their school that they're currently in. And that's fine. This person knows the risk involved. That, what happens if after 6 years, there are just 2 UTDs? The school's going to say, I'm sorry. And this person will live with that risk. But it could also happen that 2 become 3, and suddenly somebody else offers this person a fancy job. That's possible. But never mind your PhD school. It's a school where you get your first job that's paying your salary, but you could make tenure someday. That's a school that should factor into your discussions. And if you've chosen to have a journalist different from that school, you should know it and you should own it. This person's running the risk. That's fine. I respect this person, and I like the fact this person says, it's my life, my choice. That's what I mean by school.
Okay, then now we can go over the questions submitted by our participants. The first one is, journals have specific expectations regarding data sharing, citation, and theoretical, empirical, or managerial implications. So when writing up our paper, what is the best way to decide what journal an idea best fit with?
So I would start with this, right? If you're going to shoot for certain journals, it should fit with your strategy. There's no point saying you have an idea and it's going to go to this journal, but it's got no fit with the strategy. So the example I give is, let's go to this person who's decided that they're only going to shoot for UTDs. Maybe somebody comes to this person with some idea, there's data, they're ready to rock and roll, but it's not going to get their UTD based on what this person thinks, right? It could be right, could be wrong. That is not something worth pursuing. Then fit with the strategy, right? This person really wants to move. This person thinks, I am good, I can prove it, I'm going to go for it. It's a bad fit, right? So the first factor always is, what are you shooting for? After that, look at what idea data is available and see if it fits with the set of journals you're shooting for. But that's how I would approach it, right? Like, you will adjust. I mean, expected in terms of data sharing, you'll share data unless there's some funky NDA involved. Citations, it's fine. I mean, you'll adjust your citations. A lot of this is doable. It's good writing, it's something. But the biggest question is, all this takes time. And so this better fit with your strategy, because you go down a path of working a paper, it takes up time. And right now, your scarce resource, one of the many scarce resources, is time. So that's how it approaches.
Thank you. So right now we move on the second question. Are there any strategy for writing a paper that could more easily to submit it more widely, or do you recommend fully writing with one specific journal in mind for every paper?
Okay, so first thing I would state is, your idea should be broad. It should be broad enough to have multiple journals. If you ever start a paper that can only go to one journal, that is a nightmare. What happens if it gets rejected? like there are idiosyncrasies in the review process, right? Look, people try to be fair. Like it's been my experience, at least editors are trying to do the right thing. Reviews are trying. But there are individual idiosyncrasies. There are things, I've been a reviewer, I've been an AE, there are things I like, so I think it's very risky to have an idea that's so narrow it can only go to one place. I think the idea should be broad and should be able to go to multiple journals. Great. Once you figure that out, then you'll say, okay, here are the 3 journals I'm going to go for in this order. And once you figure out that order based on your strategy, then you should tailor that writing and that idea for that journal. 100%. You should give them the write-up consistent with the papers that go to that journal. You should give them the data the way they expect. If they want it publicly posted, whatever it takes. But the idea needs to be broad. I think it's very risky to write a paper for one journal. Like, especially assistant prof, you don't have time. You should, if that gets rejected, you should to pivot and send it to the next one. So I'd say the idea should be broad, but once you decide on that and targeting, then you better write it for that journal. And when you're sending it to the next one, if it gets rejected, forget what you've done. Rewrite it completely for the next journal. Cite that journal, etc.
Thank you very much. So for the next 3 questions, it's more related to job market and career development. So this one is, I want to learn more about how we can maintain and expand research pipelines during and also after the job market.
So frankly, during the job market, please focus on getting a job. Like, let's go. But let's imagine you have a job, right? You've got a job, and that's the job you're running with. The question is, how do you keep and grow your research pipeline? This is hard because you moved out of your PhD space. Your advisor may move on to the next student, maybe. I would say the single biggest factor is self-motivation. This is hard. This is a lonely profession. This is very rarely you're part of a gang. This is normally you driving your life. A big part is just self-motivation, and what I call 99% of this is perspiration. Like just hours and sweat. So that's one. The second is network. Like, look, I was an assistant prof at conferences going up to folks saying, I saw you had this paper, you presented a conference, it never got published. I'm sure the data's sitting with you. We did this other stuff. Actually, I can take some names here. There's a guy called Amitav Chakravarti. He's in LSE right now. He was in NYU those days, I think. So I went up to him and said, you have this idea, and there was me and a guy called Rajesh. We were both came out together. We were assistant profs. And if we can get that data from you, here's where to slant it. He agreed to work with us. I give him credit, like he was a lot senior to us. It got into an OBHTP, right? I've done that. Now look, you're going to try. Sometimes, guys, people are willing to work with you, and sometimes they're not. If it's not, you need to move on. But network is important. Like, a lot of people have helped me in my life. And I say thank you to my network all the time. But you work at it. At Wayne State, my first job, there was a guy called Abhijit Viswas. I think we have 5 or 10 papers together. I forget what. I didn't know the man. I got the job. And first 2 years, I would just go have coffee with him. And that built into him saying, I've got this paper, I don't know what to do with it. And that grew into a variety of papers. So yeah, network is important, but you're going to fail sometimes. Hustle is important. You're going to chase down different leads. On the CB side, I'll say chase down different data sources. On the quant side, I'm sure they have their own versions of this, right? But it's you, and you're going to hustle. And I wish I could tell you that there's an easy way to do this. It's not going to happen unless you have an elder brother in the game who's trying to help you out. But otherwise, it's you. And part of it is, a lot of it is just self-motivation. Working on ideas. I'll tell you what's not on the slide. What my advisor kept telling me, and that's the one thing I've always remembered. Every few months, stare at your portfolio of projects and be ready to drop projects. Because if you do not, you're going to be chasing a variety of projects that are not working, that are time sinks. So while it's important to take on projects, also important to drop projects if you think it's not going to work out. And I'll give an example. My first publication was an OBHTB with this great person. And then this person pitched 3 others at me. And it was between that and bunch of work on pricing. I went down the pricing path. I've never regretted it. It's been great for me. This person tells me, and it's been what, 15 years? You could have worked with me. I don't know what you did. You disappeared and started doing this other stuff. Maybe my choice. I own that choice, but I would urge you to think about not only what you're going to do, but what you're not going to do, because it takes up time.
Thank you very much. So we move on to the next questions. General tips on navigating the job market from a non-tenure position.
So I'll tell you what I understood from this. You don't have a tenure track position, and you want to get a tenure track job. Very crudely, this is what I understood from this question. So coming at it from that, the first thing you need is a story. Everyone wants to know what happened, right? This is slightly different to the normal. People are used to, you have a tenure track job going to another one, or you're a PhD student going to a tenure track job, or you're a postdoc going to a tenure track job. You have something else. People will say, I want to make sense of this. Tell me your story. And you need a story. By the way, you need a story for everything. If you want to change jobs, you need a story. If you want to get promoted to go somewhere else, you need a story. So you need to have a coherent story that you can explain in 2-3 sentences. Here's where I am. Here's where I want to go. Have that story. That's one. The second is you need to showcase your skills. Again, this is the same as a PhD student. PhD students have to showcase their skills when they come out. It's the same thing. People will say, how have you been trained? What's your pipeline look like? The same metrics. But they also want the story because now they're dealing with something that's different. And look, there are going to be questions. This is not going to be easy. And there are people who are going to just cut you off without ever talking to you. Is it fair? No, but that's life. So if you're going from a non-tenure position to a tenure track job, there will be questions. You may not always get the opportunity to make your case, but if you do, you need a coherent story. You need to show you can make the transition. I will tell you the one thing that helps: a champion. I have had a lot of people who help me, and what they do is they go around conferences saying, you know, I heard you're looking for someone. This guy's pretty good. Why don't you talk to him? You need champions. Is it easy to find? No. But I would urge you to see if you can find a champion. A champion is not a mentor. A champion is not someone who's neutral. A champion is someone who's declared their bias to the entire job market, that they are on your team and they're fighting for you. It's important to have that. Now, how you create a champion, that's hard. But I would say you need to have some champions, and you need to thank your champions all the time, and you need to help their careers if you can. And there are ways you can help them even as a junior scholar. I'll pause and go to the next one.
Thank you. So for the next one, if more related to PhD student, if you have no publication when going on the job market, how would you narrow down schools to apply to?
First thing I'll say is I don't look, it's a long time since I've checked who goes where. Like I know DocSIG publishes this very nice thing.
Yes.
I don't know what the stats are, but I refuse to believe everybody's coming out with a publication. There's going to be some folks, that's one. They may have revisions, but it's not clear everything has gone through the system, right? So that's one. So people are used to looking at people who don't have publications. That's one. So don't knock yourself. But yes, typically what happens is there'll be a drop-down model. If you're coming out from the same school and someone has a publication and you don't, and if all else is equal, same training, same kind of promise, same past experience, you will have to drop down a bit. It doesn't mean you should not apply to some schools, but it just imagines that nobody applies only to one type of school. It's a portfolio model. So maybe, so I sent out 90 applications. Please, I hope all of you are smarter than me and do not send out 90 applications when you're a PhD student. I sent out 90. But you have a portfolio that you're going to send it out to, and it just means that portfolio will have a bigger share of schools slightly lower down relative to baseline. But I'll tell you what really helps if you think your CV is slightly weak. What do you have to sell beyond your CV? do not define your CV only in terms of research. Please. There are many things that go into a hiring decision. People want to know, will you come? Do you have any ties to the region? People want to know, can they throw you in a classroom right away? So look, I am very old. So when I went on the market as a PhD student, I was very old. Everyone looked at me and said, awesome, we can put this guy in MBA class today. That helped, right, in some cases. So you pick, but you've got to define yourself in terms of research, and that's one thing, but what else are you bringing to the table? Now, look, it's hard. If you're young, you haven't done other stuff, then you're going to define in terms of research. But look at what else you have and see. If you have ties to the region, that helps. And that is something, by the way, you do not do at the time of the job market. That is something you're telling those schools for the past 3 years as a PhD student. I'm going to pause, go to the next one.
So on my list, I have 1, 6, and 7 question in terms of balancing research priority and innovation. And we also open the chat for if you have further more questions. So the 6th question is, how can they balance the pursuit of top-tier publication with the need to explore innovative research that may not immediately align with these established rankings?
This is not going to be a popular answer, but here's my view. Existing marketing journals, no matter which you target, I think they are open to a wide variety of articles and offers a reasonable scope for innovation. But if you're doing something radical, that's going to take you outside your journal lists, I would suggest you wait for post-tenure or frankly post-full. Like, this is risky. You want to go down this path and do something crazily innovative, like something so innovative that it doesn't fit into existing marketing journals. I mean, wow, that's going to be like something clearly very radical. And I would be very nervous taking this on without locking down. Now, look, I'm prevention focused. I'm the most prevention focused person in history of mankind. So I do value some level of security. Some people may be risk seeking. I get it. But I would suggest, if it's very radical, something that, you know, no journal is willing to accept today, I would suggest putting that off for post-tenure or post-full, not before. My take.
Thank you for this answer. And then we have last question. Given the increasing push for interdisciplinary research, how do scholars balance publishing in top-ranked discipline-specific journals versus interdisciplinary journals that may not be on traditional rankings?
Again, this is not going to be the answer that some of you are looking for. Where is this push? I don't see it. I've never seen it. There's no department chair has come to me and said, what I really want is interdisciplinary work. No one has said this. What they've said is, please publish in marketing journals. In fact, they even look at me in journals that are slightly outside marketing, but in business journals, and say, what are you doing, man? So yeah, I've not seen a single department chair who's come and said, what I really want you to do is interdisciplinary work. They've always said, give me marketing journals. Why? Because this person wants to tell the dean, you know, I'm very highly ranked in marketing journals. If it's so interdisciplinary that it can't get published in a marketing journal, that's great. But what do you want your department chair to do with it? I've not seen this push, right? I definitely would not do this. Like, I don't think you'll get rewarded for it. Definitely from your own school. Like, I think the best rewards you get are for your discipline. If you go out and say, these are my top tier journals in my discipline, or whatever your journalist is, and I've published it. That's awesome. But this, A, it's hard. And B, I'm not clear what the reward is. C, no one's asked for it. At least no one's ever asked me for it. They've always told me, please publish in marketing journals. Please be focused. This is what your department chair can go and sell to the dean. Now you put your department saying, I'm doing this interdisciplinary stuff. I mean, you should say, yeah, good, why? So at least I have not seen it. I've not seen this push. Nobody's ever asked me. In fact, exact reverse. So yeah, I would not do it. If you want to do it, I would suggest you get tenure first and then try all this. But right now, I would not do this at all, unless it fits very nicely in a marketing journey.
I keep nodding my hand and then agree on this.
So I'm happy to take any questions from the crowd. You're controlling time, so I'll be guided by you in terms of what happens.
Yes, we have a very perfect timing strategy right now. It's like 2:57. Is there anyone who would like to like unmute or ask a question?
Should I stop sharing? That will make life easier.
Yes.
Okay. Very nice to see familiar faces.
Yeah, Abby and Mackenzie, we're here in the crowd. We were at your school before, so
Yes, familiar faces.
we encourage everyone to ask questions because Abby is a very good feedback giver, and this is a safe environment for PhD students to ask questions.
Oh, I have one coming to my chat box. Does the number of citations on a paper have any impact in the selection process?
So I think definitely when you're going up for tenure, I'm not sure it plays that much of a role. You're too young in your career, it's too early. Later on, I think there's a role. You know, I'm not, you can become full with very few citations, just to be clear. Totally doable. And I know this varies by type, like quant folks on average get slightly lower citations. I get that. So does it play a role? I don't think it plays a role for tenure. Later on, I think it does. You can still get past that with, you know, publications at a certain level and a certain number. But yeah, I mean, it's not clear to me that in the first few years of your career, that's that big a deal. At least going through the initial tenure hurdle. Like, you're too young. Like, folks are saying, you know, let's just see what you have.
And I have one last questions. How and when should discussions about what journal list you are targeting come up with co-authors?
I mean, you should come up before you start, because you're not, I'll tell you the problems that could arise. You could start a paper, and if you haven't had a discussion, your co-author would say, great paper, it should go to Journal X. And you're going to say, no, I'm thinking of this strategy, it should go here, let's at least try. And then you have this argument. Or it's happened to me. There are some papers that I want to give up on if it hasn't got to certain journals. And your co-author says, I want to drag this on and keep trying. Maybe it's very important to your co-author, in which case you should be able to say, okay, I want to drop off. And I'm good. Wherever you take this, we are good. I would discuss it upfront. Like your co-author needs to be somebody you can discuss anything upfront. Have that discussion. It's nice to be on the same page. You're not always on the same page. Sometimes it gets messy. You'll deal with it. I mean, you won't be the first, you won't be the last.
Thank you very much. Then I will leave to Julia to have our amazing closing.
Well, thank you, Dr. Guha, for sharing your insights, wisdom, and time with us today. So if anyone is curious, want to revisit a topic that we discussed today, we're going to post a recording in the next days on our YouTube channel. So go on YouTube, search for DocSIG. Other than that, please stay in touch with us on LinkedIn. We post a lot of content there, DocSIG on LinkedIn, or our website, docsig.org, is also well maintained, and we post a lot of gold nuggets there. So we hope this job market webinar was helpful to you. We're going to do more job market webinars in the coming next 6 months. So if you're going on the job market or you want to prepare for the job market in a year or two, you're always welcome to join us. Well, we hope you have a wonderful day, a wonderful weekend. And again, Dr. Guha, thank you so much for joining us today. Any
Julia,
final remarks? Yeah.
Julia, thank you. Xiaoying, thank you.
then we will get started in this wonderful webinar.